This special JCN forum on hurricane insurance is brought to you by the following sponsors: the Insurance Commission of the Bahamas, World Claim Global Claims Management, Nagico Insurances Bahamas Limited, and AFS Insurance Brokers and Agents.
Hello everyone, I'm Wendell Jones and welcome to this special program on JCN entitled Insurance After the Storm. The Bahamas has suffered a major setback as two islands in the chain were severely damaged. The rebuilding of Abaco and Grand Bahama is crucial to the national economy of the Bahamas. In the wake of Hurricane Dorian, it was discovered that a large number of homes and businesses were severely damaged or destroyed, and a number of them were either underinsured or not insured at all. It is said that in the aftermath of a major hurricane, the private sector often incurs the majority of the damage and loss. Recently, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance opined that too many Bahamians take an unmanageable and unsustainable risk by not taking out insurance coverage on homes and businesses. As a result, many of them suffer. On our program this evening, we are going to be speaking with four individuals who are connected with the insurance industry of the Bahamas in an effort to better educate the public and to assist persons in the insurance industry on information regarding general insurance. Our guests on the program this evening are Tamika Dean, who is Manager of Intermediaries and Market Conduct with the Insurance Commission of the Bahamas, Mr. Vibert Williams, Managing Director of Nagico, Ettrick Bow, who is Chairman of AFS Insurance Company, and Andrew Fusco, Chief Operating Officer of World Claim. It's a pleasure to have them all on our program. Good evening and welcome to the program today.
Thank you.
We're going to begin with some information coming from the Insurance Commission of the Bahamas, and we would like to ask Tamika Dean to explain the role of the Insurance Commission of the Bahamas in the insurance business.
Okay, so the Insurance Commission is a body corporate established by law to supervise and regulate all insurance activity in and from within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. So the Insurance Commission is governed by a board of directors who meet on a monthly basis with the superintendent, Michelle Fields, along with other managers to discuss information and anything that's emanating out of the insurance industry. So what is our role? The Insurance Commission, our role is to ensure that we have a sound and prudent marketplace for all stakeholders. Our role is also to ensure that we enforce and administer the insurance legislations. A part of our role as well is to ensure that we enforce anti-money laundering legislations. One unique thing coming out of the Bahamas insurance industry is that we are an intermediary market. And when we use the term intermediary, we're talking about the agents, brokers, sub-agents, salespersons who are in the industry. So a person who's interested in insurance, they cannot go directly to an insurance company to purchase insurance. That person will have to go to an agent and broker, and the agent and broker then places that business with the insurance company. So that's one very important fact. We try to ensure that persons are aware that, particularly in general insurance, when they want to purchase insurance, that person they speak with is not their insurer. A part of our role as well is market conduct. Coming out of market conduct, Our role is to ensure that we have consumer awareness. In instances such as Hurricane Dorian, we would normally put out public messages to ensure that persons, again, know their insurer, know what condition of average is, again, know their policy. Our job is to ensure that from time to time, when persons have complaints, to also deal with complaints handling. So that is the gist of the insurance company, to generally ensure that we have a sound and robust insurance marketplace.
Good. Mr. Williams, you are the managing director of an insurance company. And let's talk about insurance companies like yours and how they operate in the Bahamas.
All right, and thank you for having me here, for having us here. We think this is a timely topic, and possibly no better moderator. I hope I'll get some points sucking up to the moderator. So let's make an early distinction. We say general insurance. That means non-life, non-health insurance. So we're talking about your homes, cars, liability, boats, property type business. The other side of that is life and health. So when in this program we say general insurance, we mean everything other than life and health. Hurricane Dorian is obviously a matter that affects a catastrophe that affects mostly general insurance. There are life and health claims coming out of the storm as well, but I'm a general insurance guy, so I'll speak to general insurance. One very important thing for the viewers to know is that in a storm of this magnitude, estimated insured losses, let's say $1.5 billion, there is no individual company in the market that could stand that loss by itself. And so insurance companies have insurance companies. So insurance companies buy insurance. And if you take the Latin, the prefix re, R-E, you know, it generally means again. So repeat, restate, reiterate. We have something called reinsurance. Yes. And that is where we aggregate, we pool all of the risks that we write in, say, territory Bahamas, and we take that entire book of business to a reinsurance company, and we buy insurance from them, so that when a catastrophe of this magnitude hits, it lessens the impact to the individual local company. And that is how companies are able to withstand mega losses. Nagico Insurance is fairly new in the Bahamas. We've been here now 7 years. We've been in the Caribbean 37 years. We faced two massive storms, which at that time were the most powerful storms in recorded history, Irma and Maria. They happened, say, 7 to 10 days apart. For those two storms combined, Nagico Insurance has paid $750 million, $750 million US. We couldn't have done that if our reinsurance was not strong. And likewise in this industry, and I don't speak for all the other players in the market, reinsurance is a massive part of how we get through this entire process.
Yes. Itrigo, you run AFS Insurance and you are a broker agent. Tell us how you interface with the insurance companies. You buy support organizations like Nagico, don't you?
Yeah, well, what we do as brokers and agents is we interface with the customer and we bridge the gap between the customer and the insurance company. Insurance is a special language all its own. The things we say in the insurance industry mean something different in insurance than it means on the street. And oftentimes the person on the street doesn't understand the language. We act as an interpreter to make sure that the client understands what the policy is all about. Now, we also represent the insurance company because there are a lot of things that go on in the insurance business, especially fraud. And we've got to make sure to represent the insurance company properly so that we protect them from things that may happen in the marketplace. So we've got to be this honest person in the middle that looks out for everybody and make sure everybody gets what they're due. And you've got to walk a fine line in the insurance brokerage business. The key thing in insurance, it's a matter of trust. The client has to trust you to represent their interests and make sure they get what they due. The insurance company has to trust you and make sure that you are not going to be party to any fraudulent activities that would adversely impact their situation. The commission has to trust you to behave in such a manner that you will not bring ill repute to the insurance industry. You know, when we started some 11 years ago, there were a lot of things going on in the insurance industry that when you look at it, basically you say, these are a bunch of gangsters. But the insurance commission has taken action bit by bit to clean up the situation. So now the insurance industry is a lot better than it was 10, 11 years ago when we got in. One of the big things was really, you know, you're selling someone else's product. The product really is the insurance company's product that you're selling. What used to happen a whole lot is people would sell the product and the money that's supposed to get to the insurance company would not get there. There were a whole lot of brokers that owed insurance companies a lot of money. I hope that doesn't happen so much anymore. So the policing has been better by the insurance commission to cause the expression of greater integrity in the marketplace.
Okay.
So
Just want to speak to Mr. Bow's comments. What we do at the Insurance Commission to ensure that it is a fair, safe, and stable marketplace is to risk rate the entities. So what we do is we run tests to see if our companies are low risk or high risk, right? So we ensure that the insurance company has the capital and they are solvent. And as Vibert would have stated in terms of reinsurance, we do check our reinsurance programs. We have consultants who come into our organization and we run stress tests to look at situations such as this. What happens in worst case scenarios? And they actually give us some advice and we give it back to the insurers as well. In addition to that, we do on-site examinations. So as Mr. Bow would have stated in terms of policing the industry, we do go into the institutions, we test the systems, test the policies, test the procedures, test the people to ensure that they are selling and not mis-selling, advising and not misadvising, and ensure that they have systems in place to meet their liabilities when they fall due.
Interesting. Andrew Frisco, you are from World Claim, right? And tell us what World Claim is all about. I suspect you're there to help the consumer.
Yes, World Claim is a public insurance adjusting company, and we've been around for like 37 years. I've been to 55 natural disasters in 34 countries around the world, responding to the needs of policyholders in the preparation, documentation, and negotiation of your insurance claim. I mean, you just heard insurance, reinsurance, the complexities between the insurance agent and broker in order to get the coverage proper to the insured, and then the regulations that the insurance board put together. Prior to 2017, in my industry, the Bahamas was the Wild West. So anybody could come and operate here with no oversight from my side as claims adjusters representing the policyholder. Fortunately for companies like us, the Insurance Commission enacts now licensing for these organizations, and our company was fortunate enough to partner with a Bahamian company and now spread our expertise in the Bahamas to help those policyholders who struggle with the understanding the complexities of the policies, the reinsurance, the adjusters, dealing with the broker. If the broker, as he says, Mr. Bow, does his job, aggregates that policy correctly from the insurance company, then the policyholder has a document that should be able to affect good recovery. Problem is, underinsurance is the biggest problem. People come to Mr. Bowe and he says, you need to have this much insurance. And the premium is this. And they go, oh, Mr. Bowe, the premium's got to be this. Well, in order to get that, there's penalties. There's clauses that reduce recovery if you're underinsured. And that comes with guidance. I'm sure when Mr. Bowe goes to sell a policy, he says, you have to have full coverage for your property in order to have this policy respond properly. Otherwise, you're going to risk underinsurance. And people risk underinsurance. They would rather take a smaller premium and take that one risk that this event doesn't happen, and then when they come and have this event, they blame this gentleman because they're not getting paid properly because there's not enough coverage. And it's just like everything else. Read the policy. The policy is the rule book. It explains how the claims are settled and how they're aggregated. And this money's not in the Bahamas. This money's in London. This money's offshore. So we need to be sure that these claims are properly valued for the policyholder, that they get the best advice from their broker, the insurance company. They can use outside help. The insurance commission has all the resources for the policyholders. But they should use the insurance commissioner's resources. They should use the broker's resources. Read the policy that the insurance company sent them. And if they can go through it on their own, they should be able to affect good recovery.
Let's talk a little bit about underinsurance. And that is a big complaint after every major disaster. People talk about being underinsured. The role of the Insurance Commission here to ensure that people are protected. What is your role?
Well, I can tell you the Insurance Act itself gives some guidance on condition of average. We encourage persons, again, to know their policy, to ask questions. Our role in particular is, I can tell you, on an annual basis, as a part of our consumer awareness program, we recognize that through data collection, there are deficiencies and lack of knowledge in the industry. So what we have done is we put out public messages on television, on radio, of certain things that will impact the customer, right? During the time of hurricane, you will see that we will put out a public message pertaining to condition of average. We have it where it's laid out in its simplest form so persons understand that if they are uninsured, they will be impacted in some way, shape, or form. We say again, insurance, as Barbara would have explained, general insurance is a short-term insurance. Annually, the contract is up. We say to our customers, and we've put out public messages, know your insurer, know your policy. That means that if you upgrade, go into your insurance company. We've said to persons all the time, please renegotiate your contract. There are policy renewal statements that a customer gets that has different variation. If you increase your home by 5%, the value, this is what the new premium will be. I think persons, because of a lack of knowledge, fear paying a bigger premium. But our role is to ensure that you are aware through the knowledge and understanding that you have that advantage to go and speak with Ettrick Bowe and other brokers to renegotiate your terms and perhaps give payment plans or get on a payment plan where you're going to get the maximum settlement in the event of a loss. So our major role is to, one, to ensure that persons are aware, and two, our role, as Ettrick would have stated, in terms of the commission started to police the industry. So one of our role, a major part of our role is to ensure that persons who are selling, they are qualified to sell. They are experienced to sell. They could advise the client to ensure to take out the right amount of insurance.
Yeah.
And that is very important to us.
Haven't there been many people who have bought insurances, and people would know, and agents and brokers would know, the insurance company would know that they were underinsured? Mr. Williams?
Yes, sure. We've come across quite a number of them in the Abacos, for example, They've been through a number of storms, and so in the main, our customers were pretty well insured in this storm. But times change and costs change. So a few years ago, we had no VAT, and then it went to 7.5%. We did not see, although we put out PSAs, public service announcements, and although we advised clients at renewals, we did not see across the board an increase in sums insured. And then VAT went to 12%. We did not see an increase in sums insured. What that meant is that your house is now at least 12 times more expensive to repair than it was before VAT was implemented. So if you were to try to replace that particular window, and that window cost $100, now $112. The entire replacement cost of your house just went up. But most people do not move their values along in step with inflation.
What is your role then to ensure that that happens? Both you and Mr. Bull.
Let me chime in here, because there's some economic realities that we have to face. People just don't have the money. You know, our situation in this country is we're unbalanced economically. And we want people to cover fully. A lot of people just can't. A lot of people are just struggling to cover the bit that they can. So they have really and truly, when you look at their budget, they have to get as much insurance as they can afford to get. You can't get what you can't afford to get. And that is just a reality. A lot of people are just limited as to what they can buy. And we are charged with making sure that they understand what the situation is. If you're buying 75% coverage, we make sure that you understand. When claim time comes, this is what is going to happen. We've got to make sure you're very clear on that. And when there are economic constraints on the customer side, that is pretty much the most you can do, rather than have them go to a situation where they are uninsured. But
Okay.
but that's the economic
Say
reality.
something, and I say this all the time, and it rubs people the wrong way sometimes, but I say it all the time because it is a fact. If you say that you cannot afford the premium for your house insurance and you live in a catastrophe zone, then you are definitely the one who should buy the insurance, because you cannot afford to replace your house. And in case that sounds elitist, I don't mean it to be. I've had to sit too many times, Mr. Jones, with someone at the worst possible time, especially Abaco. Abaco did a number on me. I've been to catastrophes all through the region. I've never seen anything like Abaco. And you sit with this retiree who definitely can't now qualify for a second mortgage. And you have to tell that person at that time that I've got to take 35% of your claim because you were 35% underinsured. And remember, I have reinsurance. If they were 100% insured, I would pay them 100%. So this is not a money issue. I'm not trying to save here by applying average. I just simply have to because of contract.
Yeah.
So at the worst possible time, I have to give them additional bad news. Those who say they cannot afford to pay their insurance premiums are precisely the ones who should probably insure the value.
But isn't that a subjective view based on your evaluation of the property, Fusco? You tell them that you would have to discount them by 35% without a proper appraisal?
No, I wouldn't say without a proper appraisal. We never approach any policy to determine cost per square foot of rebuild costs. We never approach any property and arbitrarily determine cost per square foot. The first and very important thing that we do is we speak to reputable members in the construction field, and we ask if the building association has approved construction rates in different areas. And so we use standard acceptable reconstruction prices.
Mr. Fusco?
Yeah, well, that's where it gets a little mucky. Those construction prices approved dates you'd have to look at the date the approved price was. Is it before the storm or after the storm? Because what we heard earlier is VAT went up 12%, people can't afford it, the underinsurance. It's even worse than that. The demand surge that occurs after an event like this, the minute the wind stops blowing, the earth stops shaking, and the water recedes, the cost of price of construction starts at 30% increase from the day after the storm in just about every field across the trades. Now, if recovery is fast, demand surge goes like this. If recovery is slow, it goes like this. It goes like this, and it keeps climbing. Your industry is strained. There's no place to house the workers in Abaco. There's no place to house the people who need to see their houses or the rebuilding process. What is the cost to get those materials over there? So when they're valuing the property for insurance purposes and people are purchasing insurance, the education process needs to go even a step higher, right? They need to say, hey, when this event happens, what happens if an Abaco happens? Barging over all the materials even more so than before. A glut in the system. There's no place to put the materials protected. So all of those costs go up. So not only are you underinsured, but the price of construction has gone up 30 to 50% during the event while it's in surge. I watched New Zealand increase construction for 10 years from the date of the first earthquake because it was a slow recovery. They fought the system. The faster recovery, the faster the prices come down. But in the valuation of the properties before you purchase the property, these conversations need to happen with stakeholders, the banks. Your banks are putting your people at risk, right? Because they're saying insure your mortgage amount. Well, the mortgage amount keeps going down, and if they're going to take it, if they're going to do something, right? They're going to come to this gentleman and go, I only owe the bank $200,000. I know I got a $400,000 home, so that's all I need to protect.
Yeah.
Well, that's a 50% underinsured.
You know, guess what? I did a public, Nachico did a public service announcement, and the caption of that public service announcement was "Don't listen to your bank." That was the caption of the public service announcement. So where's your main camera? That's your main camera.
I'm talking to your people.
So I'm gonna, with your permission,
yes.
I'm gonna say something to the insuring public.
Yeah.
Do not buy insurance purely on recommendations from your bank. Your bank, most of them, are not insurance qualified and not capable of properly advising you. Do not insure for the amount of your mortgage. Some people have a $500,000 home. They are borrowing $100,000 from the bank to add a second unit, an efficiency, for example. And the bank says, give me insurance for $100,000. Well, you're already 20% insured, right? So don't listen to your bank, please.
Okay, all right. We have to take a break here. We are talking about insurance after the storm. We take this break, we'll come right back.
This special JCN forum on hurricane insurance is brought to you by the following sponsors: the Insurance Commission of the Bahamas, World Claim Global Claims Management, Nagico Insurances Bahamas Limited, and AFS Insurance Brokers and Agents.
We're back here on our program, a special program dealing with insurance, the insurance industry. And we have Ms. Dean here from the Insurance Commission, Mr. Williams from NAGICO, Mr. Fusco from World Claims, and Mr. Bowe from AFS Insurance. And there are a whole lot of people who have been insured, and they claim that, well, the insurance company told me that I only had water damage. I only had flood damage, Ms. Dean. They didn't lose a roof or any windows, but they had a whole lot of water in their homes. Shouldn't they be able to claim in their insurance, under their insurance policy?
Well, they should, and I think the better person to answer this would probably be Vibert. But again, this goes to know your policy.
Yes.
Right? And there are some cases where persons have purchased catastrophic insurance and some persons have not yet. But again, I do think the insurance guru out of the general insurance industry should be able to.
All right, let's hear Mr. Williams.
The insurance guru, I'll take it.
Now I want to hear it.
Yeah, listen, I do not know of any policy in the Bahamas. I want to be careful here. I do not know of any policy in the Bahamas that covers catastrophe, that provides catastrophe cover, that does not cover flood resulting from a catastrophe.
Hurricane insurance and catastrophe insurance the same
It's the
thing?
same.
Yes.
The catastrophe element are the natural disaster elements. So your tsunamis, your earthquakes, your
Right.
hurricanes, cyclones, windstorms,
Tornadoes.
right? I do not know of any insurance policy in the Bahamas or in the region that provides catastrophe cover, but that does not provide cover for flood resulting from a catastrophe. And so if there is someone who has been denied insurance because their insurance company told them that they did not have flood cover from a hurricane, that would be strange, and we would probably need to take a look at their policy wording. Now, it is usual in the US of A that flood is a specific exclusion because flood is considered so catastrophic that it would break insurance companies, and so it's something that the federal government is responsible for. So perhaps there were those homeowners who live in the US that probably expected that flood would not be an element of their catastrophe cover. But again, it would be highly, highly unusual if any insurance company says to any client in the Bahamas that flood is not a part of your catastrophe cover.
So I agree with that 1,000%. Probably, do you have not admitted carriers here? You have carriers, mainland carriers, not admitted paper here. You may have some U.S.-based carrier insuring a property in
Correct.
One of the islands, and it probably does not, it excludes flood because those policies do exclude flood if they're U.S.-based policies.
Right.
Because it's only an NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, that would pay it.
So just to be clear, in terms of, he talks about the non-admitted, so there are some companies or some policy holders who insure their property with a entity outside of the Bahamas. In that case, they may come to the Insurance Commission, or they should, based on the Insurance Act, to get an exemption. And this is normally for specialty risks. But we can tell you, in some instances, we may offer the no objection. However, we say, because we have not registered that institution, because we have not monitored that institution, then if something happens, then the Bahamas jurisdiction is not liable. So we want to be very clear in terms of what Andrew's speaking about.
Historically, we have had some issues with flooding that didn't result from a hurricane, and claims were not paid.
And claims were not paid.
That's right. So there's that as well. You know, we were very careful earlier to say flooding resulting from a catastrophic situation. But If the groundwater just rises, for instance, that might be looked at a little bit differently in some cases.
Interesting. Are you able in the Bahamas, Mr. Bowe, Mr. Williams, I asked you two specifically, to insure a part of your building, for instance, just the roof of a building under catastrophic hurricane coverage, or catastrophic coverage, or catastrophe coverage? Just the roof.
Well, isn't that why average was? Wasn't that why average was came about, right? Because the insurance company said everyone was underinsuring back in the day before they came up with average.
Yes.
You know, why not? And the insurance companies go, how come every time there's a fire, only my portion of the building burns? So there's got to be some fairness. You need to insure so that we're both taking the risk. And if you're not going to take the risk on your half, then I'm only going to pay a portion of my risk if you're going to underinsure.
Yeah, but this is a huge building, okay? And the walls are solid. Mm-hmm. Am I able to get from Nagico insurance just to cover my roof?
All right, so here's the way I answer this question. You can insure anything. If you wanted to insure your roof only, you can insure your roof only. Now that's going to surprise a lot of people to hear. It's going to surprise a lot of people to hear. But if you would farm out of your entire risk, the highest risk portion, and say, I want to insure the thing that is most likely to be damaged, then you will be presenting to insurers the highest risk item. So you want to insure your roof. What's the value of your roof? $250,000? Okay, my premium is $150,000.
That's not realistic.
But that's the point. The point is that if you're going to try to give the insurance companies solely the highest risk, then insurance companies must charge a premium, must calculate and charge a premium that is commensurate, that is suitable for the risk that you are giving them. The fact that we are able to charge 1.3% of the value of your building to insure your building means that we are considering that there are elements of your building that may not be compromised in a storm. So when we look at the building in its entirety, we consider their high-risk elements, windows, doors, roof, those are likely to be damaged, but your reinforced concrete blocks, they may be fine. And so you are charged a lower premium. Now, if you give us the highest portion only, now you'll pay the premium for it. You can insure anything you want to insure if you just pay the premium. It is not feasible, and that's why it doesn't work. It's not feasible for the insurance company, neither will it be feasible for you based on the premium that I would charge.
Okay.
Now you do have options, right? If persons want to have a lower premium, again, this is the conversation that they would have with their agent and broker and perhaps their insurer. They may want to increase the deductible.
And that is something they never want to do.
Yes.
Because-
Let's
let
talk
me
about
tell you what happens in real life,
Talk
right?
about the deductible.
You get damage to your roof, your deductible is $2,000. You know what the damage is? $2,030. And so, real life, I mean, these figures are based on statistics. I think you want to, unless you can afford it, unless you have the money to put in there, you need to have your deductible as low as possible.
How do you arrive at the deductible?
Yeah. Good question. I'll take this, since I'm the guru.
The guru.
Reinsurance contracts. The insurance industry in the Caribbean, in most of the world, are price and terms takers. Our insurance companies set the terms that we charge here, so that when we say to the customers in the Bahamas that we are going to have to increase insurance premiums, we think by 15 to 20% in the coming year, many people think it's because we are trying to make more money. Not so. The fact is that we've just passed on the largest loss in our history to our reinsurance companies. Now, they've suffered a massive loss. So they're going to say, okay, next year, I want a minimum of 15% increase on the premiums that you insurance companies pay to me. Now, because we have to pay them on an increased percentage in order for us to remain economically viable, then, you
have to pass it on.
we have to pass it on. And so that is what happens. So our terms, the deductibles, are instructions to our local industry. As a matter of fact, there are reinsurers who are actually discussing mandatory increases in deductibles for the affected territories. We don't know if it's going to end up being implemented, but we know that there are reinsurers who are trying to get us to go up to at least 3% on deductibles in the affected islands. So we are price takers and we are term takers.
And so, as a result of Dorian, it's a foregone conclusion that the rate of insurances are going to increase astronomically.
There's going to be an appreciable
A
increase.
hefty
An
increase.
appreciable increase.
An appreciable increase, okay.
It'll be a substantial increase.
A substantial increase.
It'll be a substantial increase.
And Mr. Bowe makes the point already that a whole lot of people are not able to afford these rates.
We have to look at our choice profiles because you have to weigh your options. What is more important to you? You're taking a bet. How likely is my building to be damaged? And if you think that your building is going to be damaged or more likely to be damaged, and you can't afford to fix it, then hey, you better try your best to get coverage.
And that's the most important part, is if you can't afford to fix it. So you have to make sure that the current policy that's in place responds to its fullest. So I hate to go back to some things that you said about the pricing. If you look at standardized pricing and you don't price the recovery, the repair, the reinstatement of the property after the loss with the demand surge, it gets exponentially worse. But here's a factor. It's not impossible, and you're not going to like this, it's not impossible to be underinsured and still be able to collect the policy less its deductible in its maximum amount, even in a partial loss based upon today's market. If the increased cost of construction goes up 100%, you need to not use those standardized rates, because those rates mean nothing to anybody because they can't be functioned. The only way to value a risk is to find out who can do the work today. Who's got the materials today, who's available today, and if that's not the answer, then that unit cost, that standardized rate, is not the right one. It has to be one to be able to get the materials here, find the right contractor who has housing for those people, and the underinsurance issue may go away because the loss now is going to cost your client 2 times more to fix. So you have to value it at 2 times more. I think you'll agree with me that if the market rate to do that work is what the people should be making claim for, not a standardized rate that sat in a book the day before the event or the day after the event, because there's not a window, a door, a piece of concrete, a nail over on any of these islands. So in order to lift that stuff here and to get those workers here, the increased cost of construction is going to be exponential.
Right.
That is a very good conversation that has to be had, right? Because nothing is free. If you're going to look at doubling what you're going to be able to claim for, then before this all happens, you've got to be able to project that, and then you've got to be able to charge at that high level.
Correct.
You see, so
And
it's not free.
And I agree. And here's the biggest problem with the system. The system knows that. Demand surge isn't my concept. There are papers written upon this. The first demand surge was in 1760 in England when a storm hit there and wood went from 7 pence to 24 pence. So the insurance industry has been calculating increased cost of construction after catastrophic losses for decades. We have to stop the repair, damage, repair, repeat, repair cycle. We need to educate the public and say, yes, it's going to be. Don't hate the messenger who's given the fact about this is the cost of construction. I challenge anyone to prove me wrong that the cost of construction in those islands is not going to increase at least 30%, because it's not possible to sustain it any other way.
Right.
So
I can't disagree with that. I agree with it, but I think we have to expand it a bit. Because this show is called Insurance After the Storm, and I think that is the problem. Most times we're having these discussions and trying to work out costs and repair costs and what it should be valued after the storm. We have a contract that was negotiated and set up on certain pillars with certain assumptions before the storm. And so if the assumption that was made in setting in the client setting their sum insured was a construction cost of $120 per square foot. Post-storm, you cannot come and charge me repair cost at $220 per square foot.
why not?
It kills
Well,
the
you
insurance
can.
industry.
You can, but there's a flip side to that. The flip side to that is then I revalue your square footage of your house by the increased cost that you're charging me. And then your value at risk goes way up in comparison to your sum insured. So what happens in that scenario is that you end up with a much larger underinsurance penalty. And so coming out of this conversation and coming out of Dorian, and if Dorian doesn't do it, nothing else will, there must be an education shift, a shift in the paradigm, a shift in how people understand, respond to price, buy, sell insurance, period, to account for these demand surges before the storm. Because you cannot do it after without some difficulty.
And I think I'd have to agree with that. I think one thing we have recognized coming out of consumer awareness is persons misrepresent. What we've been asking persons in the initial stages of filling out an insurance application to ensure that they disclose all of the material facts, to ensure that the right rate is charged, to ensure that they get the right premium. So in a lot of cases, it starts from the application process. And it's twofold, because we know that insurance is a sales-based industry. So we know that brokers want to onboard the client. The insurer also wants the client as well. But again, it comes to the initial stage. Does the client know what they're purchasing? Are they saying, my home is concrete block, asphalt shingles, whatever the case may be? Are you disclosing all the facts? So premium is one thing that we talked about, but at the same time, the premium is going to be based on what is on the application form. And that's a very important point that we need to drive home to persons as well. You have to disclose.
I went to Grand Bahama recently and saw a whole lot of homes that were damaged. Some were destroyed. Who makes the decision on when the property ought to be condemned?
It's a good question. We send out our insurance loss adjusters, and they, with their years of experience, and let me make this caveat, the loss adjusters that go out, they are contracted by the insurance company, but we do not control them. They are international loss adjusters. If there's an event in Egypt, they'll be in Egypt, wherever there is an incident. They go out and they, with their experience, they make recommendations to us to say, I think this property may be total loss. I've seen significant structural impairment. And in their reports to us, and I'm sure the process is similar for other insurers, in their reports to us, they suggest that we send out a structural engineer. And so we contract with a structural engineer, and they go out and they do their site assessments and give us an independent third-party evaluation.
I see. Mr. Fusco, you would have some problems with that.
Well, it all sounds great in practice, but the problem is, and that's exactly the way the thing should work. But after Irma and Maria, the New York Times came out with an article that said there's not enough insurance adjusters in the world to handle these cases with all the catastrophes that are going around. The gene pool in our industry is very shallow in terms of adjusters that do exactly what the gentleman just said, travel around the world. I'm that guy on the other side. I represent the policyholder. We've been around the world with all of those people, but they're cyclical. They're going to come in for 90 days, then they're going to go home. Then they're going to send in another group of people that are going to come in and pick up those files and either going to start all over again because it's not their file that they have to sign off on. Maybe they settled the case before they went home in their 90 days. I mean, my guess is they are on a 90-day term.
Well, no, I'd suggest you don't generalize the functioning of all insurance adjusters.
Okay.
And I'd push back on one thing you said. You said, that sounds good in theory, but it's different in practice.
Yeah.
Not so for the customers of Nagico Insurances. What I just said to you is precisely how it works for my company.
I respectfully agree that that's the way it works. And the only question I have is if the engineer, and this is the problem we always come up with when the claims resolution process, is what is the engineer's instructions? What is his instructions on the terms and conditions of the policy and not just the health, life, and safety issues? Because to determine whether or not a building is a total loss or repairable, like I said, I've done this all over the world. I spent years in New Zealand listened to 9 engineers talk about the single building. 7 of them say it can be repaired, and the rest say it needs to come down. So it is subjective to apply the engineering practices and the expert opinions to the terms and conditions of the policy, so that they're not just repairing something to a standard that's not new.
Okay, we have to take another break. We're talking insurance today. We take this break, we'll come right back.
This special JCN Forum on Hurricane Insurance is brought to you by the following sponsors: the Insurance Commission of the Bahamas, World Claim Global Claims Management, Nagico Insurances Bahamas Limited, and AFS Insurance Brokers and Agents.
We're back here in our final segment of our program as we talk about insurance. After the storm, Mr. Williams believed that we should also talk about it before the storm, which is very important. Mr. Fusco, how do you get involved in the after-storm activities?
We go out and tell people that there's help available. We market, we educate, we do programs like this, we give town hall meetings. All of these things we've talked about, think about that elderly person that you mentioned earlier, that pensioner that's sitting there, dealing with all of these complexities on his own. Wouldn't take his legal matters and deal with his legal matters on his own, or trust matters and use an accountant for those issues. And it's just an option. After the insurance commissioners, after you go to the insurance commissioner, you exhaust all of their options. You have an option to hire your own representative to question the report that the insurance adjuster provides, question the engineer's report on how his findings appear, question the valuation, because like the people on this stage, everyone's different. The value from the house next door to one sitting next door to each other, identically built, could be completely different. So that's why they call it insurance adjusting. It's not insurance science.
I think it's notable, though. I think we need to break down what's happening with these adjusters, right? So we want to be clear, and a part of the Insurance Commission's role is to ensure that we have an even level playing field. So we know from King Hatchet was a hammer that insurance companies, because they don't have the internal capacity and in some cases the expertise, they hire foreign adjusters, and these are adjusters that are not licensed by the Insurance Commission. As a result of that, we know it's one-sided, right? So what we recognize that in many cases there is the insured as well would need to hire their own public adjuster, and that is the definition to what Andrew is saying, right? Prior to Matthew, during Matthew in 2016, we had these adjusters soliciting, coming to the Bahamas, open the floodgates, and knocking on doors, and they're saying, hey, can I adjust your claim? Can I adjust your property? That is against the law. So I just want to be clear in terms of what's been happening now since Dorian has come. We have entered or established a protocol with the Department of Immigration. So whether it is the insurance company or the policyholder who want that extra assistance and that knowledge and education in getting the right assessment for their property, we want you to come to the Insurance Commission to get a letter of no objection first before applying to the Department of Immigration for a work permit. Okay? And I want to be clear as well, we do have adjusters registered at the Insurance Commission. So
adjusters must be registered with the Insurance Commission.
Well, adjusters, again...
Mandatory?
In cases of catastrophe, it is not mandatory because we don't have the capacity. However, if you are going to hire a foreign adjuster that we don't register, we do have to give you a letter of no objection before getting a work permit, right? Because soliciting in any way, shape, or form of an unregistered entity is against the law. So we are saying that when we issue that letter of no objection to either side, we know who the adjuster is, we know who they're licensed with, we know their qualifications, and we're comfortable enough to say that policyholder is getting the best assessment or fairest assessment at the end of the day with the settlement of their claim.
In cases where there are ambiguities in these policies, Mr. Bowe is the broker agent, you are the insurer, Mr. Williams. When there is a disagreement, when there are ambiguities, so who would settle that?
What I've witnessed is this, and we also sell for Nagico, is if there's any doubt, the customer gets the benefit of the doubt. And I was really surprised at the attitude and approach by Nagico. The chairman of Nagico, when I met him, he said to me, you know, insurance is a matter of trust, and I always remembered that. And when Matthew came along, they demonstrated that that was for real. You know, we were caused by them to have all of our customers who had claims rate us. The customers had to rate how we responded to their claim. And all the customers were rating us 10, 10, 10. We weren't doing it, they were doing it. But they were rating us 10, 10. I said, come on, man, it can't be perfect, it can't be 10. They said, yes, Mr. Bowe, yeah, I was treated really well. You know, there was one particular incident I will never forget. Matthew, the adjuster completed his work at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. At 5 p.m., Vibert called me and said, he has a check. I said, why, but what am I gonna do with a check at 5 p.m.? This is real, you know, I mean, it sounds hard, it sounds, and I know other people, they're waiting for their insurance payout 3 months later. I said, you know, you really should have been with us. This is real.
So, Mr. Williams, doing the paperwork was that easy, eh?
Listen, I can tell you, you're looking at a guy who's been working, now I'm down to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week.
After Dorian?
After Dorian. It was 18 hours a day. If you pass the Nagico building there, you'll see the lights on. and we're working. We're very personally and deeply affected by the tragedy that we've seen. There's so much loss there that the joy in handing someone a piece of paper with some numbers on it gives them hope. And like President Obama says, there's nothing more powerful than hope and the audacity of hope. And so that's what it represents at a very basic level. The ability of the insurance industry, and I'm taking this outside of NAGICO now, the ability of the insurance industry to respond at a time like this. If we didn't, it would mean the end of economies. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine what happens to Abaco? Can you imagine what happens to the Bahamas in total if this $1.5 billion of insurance income does not flow back into the economy? And so whether you like us or not, whether you think we're a necessary evil or not, the insurance industry is one of the most critical pillars of any modern day economy. You cannot survive without us. And so I would say post-Dorian, let us understand our policies better. Let us write the policies better. Let us price them better. Let us account for what happens after a catastrophe better. Let us liaise with the agents, the insurance commission better. And so that for the next one, and there will be a next one, for the next one, we come out a little better. Let us build better buildings and stick to that building code a little better.
And I believe that you wouldn't have any difficulty on how Mr. Bowe answered the question about the ambiguities in the policy. Eh?
It's funny you mention that, because in a perfect world, all claims will be settled. That is not the case. Person will have complaints and they will not be satisfied with the outcome of their claim, right? So the Insurance Commission has a complaints process. So when you talk about our role, we again try to act in the best interest of the policyholder, right? And what we do is we welcome complaints. Now it will be very clear. There is a process, right? So you will have that customer who is not satisfied, and perhaps because they were underinsured, perhaps the insurance company said that they would have misrepresented, so they will not get their fair settlement, or which they believe they should have gotten. In a case like that, they will come to the Insurance Commission and they're going to say, help me, because I don't have a house to go home to, right? In a case like that, what we ask is for the customer to go to the insurance company and get their final position. We're not settling your case based off question X was answered incorrectly, you misrepresented, you uninsured, whatever the case may be. Once they get that, then we investigate complaints. Now, I will say we do not choose sides. We are simply the mediator and the arbitrator. So what we will do is we will call Vibrate and NAGICO and say to Vibrate, we have a policy holder. What is the situation? Please walk us through the contract. Please let us see if the premium is paid, whatever the case may be, until we come to a conclusion that neither side has contravened their portion of the contract. So, like I said, yes, you're going to have persons who today are rebuilding. And you're going to have persons, we had cases in 2016, went through an arbitration process because persons' claims were not settled and they complained to the Insurance Commission.
And so it went to arbitration.
It did go to arbitration, and I can tell you that in both cases, the policyholder was successful. However, I am saying this because in not all cases, the policyholder will win, so to speak, the case. We will have to investigate and ensure that neither side, or whichever side, has contravened the policy. Because there are some cases when we say to the customer, we have done our part and we are confident that your insurer treated you fairly. Now, if you want to take your complaint outside of the commission and seek legal advice, you are welcome to do so. but we do invite you to come, and that's how we gather our data to put forward our consumer awareness initiative.
But you must ensure, or as best you can, Mr. Williams, that you have your policies are tight, right? In terms of the language of your policies.
Yeah, yes, they are. They've been tried and tested.
Yes.
And I've said to someone recently, we are slave to the policy. No insurance company should be allowed to, or should, have to stretch any term or condition of the policy to exclude something. If any company has to contort itself too much to exclude something or to limit something, something ain't right there. We are slave to the wording, and we shouldn't have to, and we don't.
I see Mr. Fusco trying to get in here.
No, they're just the basic, under the guiding principles of insurance, the insurance contract itself under contra preferendum or a contract of adhesion, depending on your language, it's a one-sided contract. So in any court in the world under a one-sided contract, it's construed against its writer. So if there's any ambiguities in that policy, and it was his policy that's been timed and tested out of London, it's in favor of the policyholder under the basic terms of insurance as a principle.
Right.
Sure, no doubt about that. Any ambiguity in the policy goes towards the customer. But let's just say the cases that we have been involved with weren't cases of someone testing policy ambiguity. Most of the cases that get to court or get into the legal system is usually because there's a gap in the perception of the client as to what they think they should get, as against what the insurance company is obligated.
Right.
Or what the insurance company thinks they're obligated for and the client is actually entitled to. So those are the balance, right? The insurance company thinks that they're right and the policyholder thinks that they're right. So we're taking this as a one-sided, the policyholder didn't do this, the policyholder didn't do that, the policyholder didn't prevent the correct information. Well, that's right. That's why he's got the insurance commission. That's why there are folks in our industry. That's why the insurance company hires their own adjusters, right? Because they're looking out for the terms and conditions that are in the policy. That individual person is going out and interpreting what he believes that contract says that the policyholder is entitled to. So what's the policyholder to do? Where does he get his information from? How do they value their claim?
Isn't there a perception of unfairness in this community with respect to how general insurances, or how people benefit from general insurances, or how the insurance companies treat policyholders? Isn't that a perception, Mr. Bowe?
There's a definite perception, and it's again we go to this language thing. Terms in the insurance business mean something different in insurance than it does to the man in the street, and that's where again the broker comes in to interpret and explain to the client what these things mean.
And this perception perhaps exists, Mr. Williams, because people are not reading.
Yes, that's one.
Reading and understanding.
Reading and understanding.
And it's also legacy. It's also legacy because over time the insurance company, for good reasons and bad, has gotten a certain stigma, a certain perception, so that someone who walks into an insurance company believes I'm going to get robbed today. And so you could be telling them yes. I said to somebody the other day, you've got to take yes for an answer. I'm agreeing with you. There was somebody else, true story. The lady came and she submitted her claim, and inside of a week, she's back there and there's a check and we're handing it to her and we've given her this document to sign that says the claim is closed, and she's like, hold on a second here. What am I missing? This is not supposed to go that smooth. Something is wrong. and so it's, legacy. People feel, I'm going to get scammed today. And so, people come in a bit defensive.
But what happens when that policyholder comes in and they say, I think it's only this little section of my roof that's gone. that needs to be replaced, and they found out that the water's migrated into a second section of the house and has created damage that didn't really manifest itself when they walked into the office a week or 2 or 3 after an event, and they take that check and they sign off on it. Do they sign off their rights away?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, once you sign the discharge, once you sign the acceptance, you are agreeing, and no court that I know of has ever overturned, you are agreeing that you are now closing your claim. You have submitted a claim, you've quantified a claim, and you're now closing a claim. There are cases that we have in our company where the client submitted an early estimate, and when our adjusters went on site, our adjusters came back and says, hey, I think that claim is a little light. And we've paid more than the client actually submitted. So there is a balance. There's also been cases where we've just accepted what the client has claimed. You win some, you lose some.
In programs such as this, you know, when we come to the closing of the program, we give a minute to each of the participants, just in case you have something in your mind that you didn't say. Mr. Bowe, we begin with you.
Mr. Jones, I want to commend you always for trying to educate the Bahamian public. I know we seem allergic to education, but we hear some of it. Insurance is a very important industry in the Bahamas, and there are tons of opportunity in the insurance industry. I think we need the right leadership and the right focus to make insurance all that it can be for the Bahamas. It's a powerful industry for this country that we need to pursue seriously.
Mr. Fusco?
Well, thank you for having us here today. We really appreciate it. I think the education process of before and after the storm just has to continue going on. You know, if we continued to educate after Matthew and told people, you know, kept that message going. We talked about, you know, these increased costs of construction after the events and to insure to that number. And you know, you're in a process now. Don't take, respectfully, the first offer the insurance company provides you unless you've done your education, done your research. Look at the numbers. When you get that offer in your hand, walk down the street. Find out if anybody can actually do that work for that number. Don't get caught with underinsurance and then an undervalued claim as well. Make sure that the policy responds correctly. Do your homework. Make sure that whatever that offer is, there's somebody who can do it for that price. Because if not, then that price isn't the price of the job.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
All right. I would say this. I'm very proud of this industry. This is a test like no other. And my company has responded well. My competitors, the industry, has responded well. And we are going to rebound from this. But I want to make a very sobering point to those of us who live here in Nassau. Our time will come. And so we need to use Dorian as a lesson to us who have not yet been so affected. We need to build better. We need to insure better. We need to understand the scope of our cover better. And don't insure through them banks.
You have the last word, since you
word.
represent the Insurance Commission.
Yes. So just want to sum up by saying this year in particular, the Insurance Commission celebrates 10 years of being a regulated body. With that being said, we will continue to build a robust insurance industry. In addition to that, we kindly ask our policyholders to know their insurer, know their intermediary, not misrepresent, but most importantly, know your policy.
Thank you so very much. We thank you all for being here this evening, educating our public on the insurance industry, particularly after Hurricane Dorian. And we wish all of the policyholders well who live in Abaco and Grand Bahama. And as Mr. Williams said, those who live in other parts of the Bahamas, including New Providence, you ought to prepare. Thank you so very much. Appreciate your being here. Thank you for watching and listening to our program. Good evening, everyone.
This special JCN Forum on Hurricane Insurance has been brought to you by the following sponsors: the Insurance Commission of the Bahamas, World Claim Global Claims Management, Nagico Insurances Bahamas Limited, and AFS Insurance Agents and Brokers.